So, I want you to imagine for a second that you were just taking a walk onto a 1940s Hollywood film set.
Oh, that's a great image to start with.
Right. Like you're strolling down what looks like this incredibly bustling, affluent city street.
Yeah.
And you see this towering 3-story brick building. I mean, it's got these heavy oak doors and perfectly illuminated windows.
All the ornate stone trim.
Exactly, the ornate stone trim.
Yeah.
And standing on the sidewalk, just looking up at it, the structure seems, completely indestructible.
It projects total permanence.
It really does. But if you walk around to the back of that exact same building, the illusion just instantly shatters.
Completely falls apart.
Yeah, you realize you are looking at this flat piece of painted canvas, and it's just propped up by a few, flimsy wooden 2x4s.
It looks heavy, but there's absolutely zero mass to it.
Zero mass. A strong gust of wind could literally knock the entire thing flat into the dirt.
Which is such a devastating image, honestly.
It is. And today, we are going to look at exactly why our modern culture is essentially mass-producing these Hollywood backlots and calling them leaders.
Yeah, it perfectly captures the reality we're living in right now. We've constructed this entire society that just relentlessly rewards the painted canvas over the actual brick.
So true. So welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to just completely unpack this truly fascinating and, well, honestly, somewhat terrifying diagnostic essay.
It really gets under your skin.
It does. It's by Jimmy Thornberry, and it's titled The Gravity of Being, Recovering True Charisma in an Age of Spectacle.
Such a powerful title.
Right. And I want to say right up front to you, yes, you listening to this right now, just think about your own life for a quick second.
Yeah, think about your daily routine.
Think about your LinkedIn feed or your social media or, even just the corporate culture at your office.
It's everywhere.
If you have ever felt just completely exhausted by this modern demand to constantly build a personal brand or curate your image.
Always performing your life for some invisible audience.
Exactly. Always performing. If you feel that, this deep dive is going to feel like a profound exhale for you.
It really will. Because the sources we are digging into today, they explain the exact underlying mechanics of why we feel that specific burnout.
Not just in your head.
No, not at all. They explain in really fascinating biological and philosophical detail why our culture constantly elevates these flashy performers over true, quiet builders.
It's a total system failure.
And by the time we wrap up this conversation, I promise you, you're going to have a completely new lens for evaluating everyone in your life.
Leaders, influencers, everybody.
Even family members, yeah. We are going to move way beyond this surface level pizzazz to understand what actually constitutes real load-bearing structural substance in a human being.
And I couldn't put this essay down because of exactly how it approaches that question of human substance.
It takes such a unique angle.
It really does. Because when I think about human character, my mind immediately goes to, psychology or sociology.
Sure, or a personality test.
Right, the Myers-Briggs or something. But the author doesn't start there at all. He totally bypasses psychology and starts with mid-20th century skyscraper architecture.
Which is wild.
It threw me at first. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
But the metaphor is just so structurally perfect.
It's a brilliant entry point, I think, because it gives us a physical vocabulary for an invisible problem.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Thornberry is basically asking us to look at this massive transition in how human beings build things.
Just literally how we construct buildings.
Right. So think about historical architecture for a moment. Picture a medieval cathedral or a classical stone estate.
Okay, yeah. Big, heavy buildings.
Exactly. For centuries, our greatest buildings were constructed using what's called load-bearing masonry.
Load-bearing masonry.
Yeah, meaning the exterior walls, those massive, heavy stone blocks you see, they were not decorative. They were deeply, fundamentally functional.
They were structural.
They were the structure. The exterior stone held the weight of the roof. It held the weight of the massive floors inside. And ultimately, it held the weight of the centuries.
Wow. So the outside was the inside, essentially. Yeah. There was no separation.
None at all.
The thing that made the building visually beautiful to look at was the exact same thing that made it physically strong. The beauty was bound to the burden.
I love that phrase. The beauty is bound to the burden. That is the absolute crux of historical architecture.
It's so poetic, but also literally true.
Yes. The building's aesthetic presence, its look, was just a direct byproduct of its structural integrity.
Right.
But then, as the author points out, Human engineering experienced this radical shift in the mid-20th century.
A total game changer.
We invented the steel frame. And with the widespread use of this internal steel skeleton, architects suddenly realized they had a profound new freedom.
Because the exterior of the building didn't need to hold anything up anymore.
Exactly. The steel frame was on the inside doing all the heavy lifting.
Which means the outside of the building becomes, structurally speaking, entirely optional.
Total blank canvas.
You don't need these huge, heavy stone blocks if the steel is holding the roof.
Precisely. So you could simply hang this lightweight skin of, glass or aluminum or some thin veneer right on the outside of the steel frame.
Like a curtain.
Right. And that architectural innovation is literally called the curtain wall.
Curtain wall, okay.
And at the time, it was hailed as a massive triumph of modern engineering because it allowed us to build skyscrapers higher and faster and with more breathtaking transparency than ever before in human history.
I mean, it changed the skyline of every major city.
It did. But, as Thornberry argues here, it introduced a fascinating new reality.
Uh-oh, here it comes.
A building could now look monumental. It could look incredibly massive and solid to the naked eye, while actually being structurally hollow on the exterior.
Because the facade carries no weight.
None. The facade no longer carries any weight. It just reflects the sky.
And this is where the essay just, man, it hits like a ton of bricks. Pun totally intended there.
Nice one.
Thank you, thank you. But the author takes this architectural history and just maps it directly onto human character.
It's a perfect parallel.
He argues that we have undergone the exact same transition socially. We've moved from a culture that historically valued load-bearing character,
The masonry, right.
to a culture that is mass-producing these curtain wall personas.
Yeah, we inhabit this economy of influence now that has just systematically decoupled the exterior presentation of a person from the internal structure of their soul.
It's just wild to think about it that way.
But it's the exact same uncoupling that happened in architecture. The exterior no longer reflects the interior reality.
So true.
We are constantly surrounded by leaders and executives, politicians, public figures, and they project this gleaming, frictionless facade of absolute certainty and competence.
They look so solid.
But structurally, internally, they are completely hollow.
I was reading this and my mind was just immediately going to the corporate world. I mean, we've all seen this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You see a CEO or a VP walk into your room, and they are the loudest. They take up the most space.
Their presentation is totally flawless.
Flawless slide deck, perfect jargon, and the whole culture just points and says, there it is. That's leadership right there.
It's dominant, it's dazzling, and it's highly, highly visible.
Right. But then when things actually get real, like when a crisis hits or the market crashes or there's a true emergency that requires actual moral courage, instead of just a good slide deck, that curtain wall just shatters.
It falls to pieces.
Because glass cannot absorb impact. There is no masonry behind the projection to actually take the weight of reality.
And going back to your opening imagery of the Hollywood backlot, that painted canvas only survives as long as the weather is perfectly calm.
Right. If there's no wind, it looks great.
But it has to be constantly braced and maintained by this crew of unseen hands. And a curtain wall persona operates the exact same way.
It needs perfect conditions.
When the environment is controlled, when the lighting is perfect and the PR team is on it, the illusion holds. But a true crisis acts like that sudden gust of wind.
It demands mass.
It demands internal structure. And if the structure isn't there, the collapse is just sudden and total.
I love that backlot analogy so much because it makes this abstract concept of character so visual for me.
Very vivid.
But, as I was reading this, I did find myself pushing back on the author just a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
I mean, let's just be real about the modern world we live in. Isn't it kind of just smart business to have a good curtain wall?
That's a fair question.
We can't all just show our messy interior brickwork on a first impression, Like, if you are pitching a startup to venture capitalists, you have to project absolute confidence to get the funding.
You have to play the game.
Right. Or if you are trying to land a job, you wear the suit, you polish the resume, you smooth out all the rough edges. So isn't a facade just a necessary tool for navigating modern life?
So that is the essential tension here. And to be really clear, the author isn't arguing that having an exterior or a public face is inherently evil.
Okay, so he's not saying we all need to show up to job interviews in sweatpants.
No. The problem isn't the mere existence of a presentation. The crisis of the counterfeit, as he calls it, occurs when the exterior is all there is.
When there's nothing behind it.
Exactly. The danger isn't that a person wears a nice suit to a meeting. The danger is when a person optimizes their entire existence for projection rather than presence.
Oof. Optimizing for projection. That stings.
They spend all their time polishing the glass and zero time pouring the concrete.
Wow.
And if a facade has no internal weight, if there is no actual competence, no hard-won virtue, no deep knowledge behind that pitch well, then we have to start looking at the physics of how that person actually stays upright in the world.
Which brings up the most mind-bending part of this essay for me.
The physics of the soul.
Yes. Because if someone is structurally hollow, like that curtain wall, how do they keep standing up when they face the actual friction of real life?
It's a great question.
And the author answers this by introducing what he calls the physics of the soul, contrasting gravity with centrifugal momentum.
Right. And to grasp this, we really have to look at the fundamental nature of reality itself.
Getting deep here.
We are. According to classical philosophy, reality actually possesses an inherent gravitational pull.
Okay.
Truth, goodness, actual competence, these things are self-sustaining. They have mass.
They weigh something.
Think about it practically. If you simply tell the truth about a situation, you don't have to expend exhausting mental energy constantly remembering what you said to whom.
Oh, that's so true. You don't have to keep your story straight.
Right. The truth just exists. It sits there like a massive boulder. It has gravity.
Because it's anchored to reality.
Yeah.
But a curtain wall persona lacks that mass. They aren't anchored to what is real. They're anchored to what just looks good.
And that leads to the fundamental law of the performative self, which is momentum is the tax you pay for lacking mass.
Momentum is the tax you pay for lacking mass.
Because the performer lacks internal gravity, they cannot simply be. They have to rely on centrifugal force to stay upright.
Like a top.
Exactly. Consider the physics of a spinning top.
Right. If you have a top just sitting on a table and it's not spinning, it instantly falls over. It just can't balance on that tiny little point.
It's impossible. The only way it stays upright is through frantic, continuous motion.
Constant spinning.
And the performative ego operates on the exact same physics. They have to spin faster and faster. They rely on hype, on sheer volume, on frantic networking.
Always escalating the drama.
Right. They have to constantly keep the audience distracted by the motion so that no one notices there is absolutely no center.
That reframes so much of the exhaustion we see in modern culture for me.
Doesn't it?
All that manic energy, the constant posting online, the desperate need to always be in the spotlight.
The hustle culture.
Yeah, the executives who literally manufacture emergencies just so they can be seen solving them.
Yeah.
It's not actually a sign of vitality or passion.
It's the opposite.
It's a sign of a void.
Yeah.
It is the exhaust fume of a soul frantically trying to generate its own gravity.
It is deeply exhausting to watch, let alone live. And to really cement this idea of the void, Thornberry pulls in this brilliant theological concept from St. Augustine of Hippo.
Going way back.
Writing all the way back in the 5th century, yeah. Augustine spent years wrestling with the philosophical nature of evil and falsehood. Like, how do they actually exist in the world?
Right.
And he came to this revolutionary conclusion. Evil and falsehood are not actual substances. They are privations.
Okay, I actually had to look this up when I was reading it. It basically means an absence of something else.
Yeah.
Right? Like a hole isn't a thing itself. A hole is just the absence of dirt.
That is the absolute perfect way to understand it. Augustine argued that blindness isn't a thing you can physically acquire. Blindness is simply the privation, the absence of sight. A shadow isn't a physical object that you can just pick up. A shadow is just the privation of light.
It's just where light isn't.
Exactly. Rot isn't a substance. It's the privation of wood's structural integrity.
Wow.
So following this exact logic, falsehood and the performative ego have no mass of their own. They are a void masking as a substance.
So when we look at someone with immense, dazzling pizzazz, we are essentially looking at a shadow and mistaking it for a solid physical object.
Did, exactly.
Which explains why the author spends so much time in the text aggressively distinguishing between true charisma and modern pizzazz.
Two very different things.
I always thought those words were basically synonyms, honestly.
Culturally, yeah, we have completely conflated them. Today, if someone says a person has charisma, they usually just mean the person is extroverted or magnetic or just really good at working a room.
Right, they're charming.
But the root of the word reveals a totally different meaning. Charisma comes from the Greek word charis, which actually means grace. It implies a gracious, unearned gift. True charisma is a natural capacity that operates in total submission to reality.
It's rooted in truth.
Yes, it is rooted in truth, which means it has gravity.
And pizzazz is the counterfeit version of that.
Pizzazz is the spinning top. It is a natural capacity, sure, but it has been severed from truth and weaponized entirely for the ego.
It's just mimicry.
The performer uses pizzazz, the volume, the lighting, the charm, to fake the effects of gravity using momentum.
You know, when I was reading this section, I was trying to map it onto modern political debates, because we see so much pizzazz on the debate stage today.
Oh, constantly.
But the sources actually highlight a historical clash that perfectly illustrates this dynamic, long before television ever existed.
The 1858 debates.
Yeah, the 1858 United States Senate race between Stephen A. Douglas and Abraham Lincoln.
It's such a great example.
It really is, because I always pictured Lincoln as this, booming, majestic, universally revered presence from the very moment he stepped into public life.
Like a walking statue.
Right, exactly. But the historical reality was completely different.
It is the ultimate historical case study in projection versus presence. Let's look at Stephen Douglas first.
Yeah.
They called him the Little Giant. He was a creature with the stage, just an absolute master of pizzazz.
A real showman.
When he campaigned across Illinois, he traveled in these customized train cars. He literally had a brass band traveling with him.
A brass band. That's incredible.
He would have a cannon fired to announce his arrival in a town.
No way. A cannon.
A literal cannon. He was impeccably dressed, he had this booming theatrical voice, and he commanded the crowd through sheer kinetic energy.
So he was the spinning top,
Yeah.
generating massive centrifugal momentum.
And then you have Lincoln standing right next to him.
The contrast is just crazy.
It couldn't be more jarring. Lincoln was physically awkward. His clothes often didn't fit right. He had this ungainly, lumbering walk.
He wasn't exactly polished.
Not at all. And contrary to our modern imagination, his voice was not a deep, resonant baritone. It was actually high-pitched, reedy, and sometimes pretty shrill when he first started speaking.
Wow.
By every single metric of modern executive coaching or media training, Abraham Lincoln had absolutely zero presence.
He would have been laughed out of a modern television studio.
Instantly.
But the text describes the crowds reacting to them in such profoundly different ways. And it wasn't just about who they agreed with politically. It was a physical reaction to the men themselves.
Yeah, when Douglas delivered his thunderous, highly polished, theatrically perfect speeches, the crowd would cheer loudly.
Because they were entertained.
They were entertained by the momentum. But when Lincoln stood up to speak, with that awkward posture and that reedy voice, this strange, documented phenomenon would occur.
This gives me chills.
After the first few minutes, the crowd would physically lean in. He commanded this absolute hypnotic stillness in the dirt squares of Illinois. Douglas had the momentum of a performer, but Lincoln possessed the massive gravity of a leader anchored to a profound truth. He wasn't spinning. He was just heavy with reality.
Imagine taking that exact dynamic and putting it in a modern corporate boardroom.
Oh, it happens every day.
You have the executive who completely dominates the meeting, loud, unyielding, demanding all eyes, generating massive momentum.
A little giant of the boardroom.
Exactly. And then you have the quiet engineer sitting in the corner. They speak maybe twice during the whole hour. Their presentation isn't flashy at all, but they actually point out the structural flaw in the project and they solve the problem.
The engineer is Lincoln.
They have the gravity. But man, this raises a huge, frustrating question. And it's the question that drove me crazy while I was reading the essay.
Let's hear it.
If centrifugal momentum is so exhausting, and if pizzazz is just a hollow shell masking a void, and if the curtain wall shatters the moment a crisis hits, why do we keep falling for it?
It's the million-dollar question.
Why do we continuously promote the loudest person in the room over the quiet builder? Like, are we just gullible?
It is incredibly frustrating, I know. But the author points out that we aren't just making some philosophical error or a moral failing here.
Okay, so what is it?
We are falling victim to our own biology. We don't choose the performer because we are stupid. We choose them because an ancient evolutionary heuristic has been completely hijacked by our modern environment.
Okay, let's break that down, starting with the word heuristic. That's basically a mental shortcut, right? Like a way for the brain to make a really quick decision without processing all the data.
Exactly. Imagine human beings living in small tribes navigating brutal ancestral environments.
Right, hunter-gatherer times.
Survival depended heavily on quickly identifying who was actually competent to lead a hunt, or negotiate with a neighboring tribe, or protect the group from a sudden threat.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. And in a life-or-death scenario, you do not have time to sit down and run a data-driven audit on everyone's skills.
Hold on, let me check your resume before we run from this tiger.
Right, exactly. Your brain needs a fast, reliable shortcut. So, human evolution provided one. Visible confidence became a highly reliable proxy for actual competence.
Because in that ancient environment, faking confidence was just too exhausting to maintain.
The cognitive load required to fake absolute confidence in a high-stakes, physically demanding life-or-death situation was simply too massive. You just couldn't fake it for long.
You collapse.
Furthermore, reality in the ancient world was a ruthless, immediate auditor.
What do you mean by that?
If you confidently swaggered to the front of the tribe and led everyone to a dry watering hole, your facade crumbled the very moment the tribe realized there was no water.
Reality catches up instantly.
The environment taxed fakery incredibly heavily, so if someone looked confident back then, they usually had the competence to back it up.
But our modern environment has completely uncoupled the appearance of confidence from the reality of competence. We removed the environmental tax.
We absolutely demolished the tax. Think about it, the invention of the camera, the teleprompter, social media algorithms, public relations teams.
It's a whole industry of faking it.
All these technologies allow an individual to project the aesthetic of absolute certainty without possessing any underlying capability whatsoever.
Right. A politician can project total mastery over this complex geopolitical policy they haven't even read.
Simply by reading a prompter with a strong jawline.
Yeah. And an influencer can project a life of total financial and spiritual flourishing while secretly drowning in debt and depression.
Exactly. The modern medium rewards the appearance of certainty, while reality alone rewards actual capability.
And this isn't just some cultural observation either. The neuroscience behind why our brains still fall for this is fascinating.
It's all about the dopamine.
Right. The text points out that high arousal novelty, the spectacle, the drama, the loud confidence, it directly exploits our dopaminergic system.
This is exactly where the biological hijacking happens. We often casually refer to dopamine as the pleasure chemical, right?
Yeah, that's how everyone talks about it.
But neuroscientists describe it much more accurately as the molecule of prediction error and seeking behavior.
Seeking behavior.
Dopamine drives us to seek out novelty, to pay attention to sudden movements, anomalies, and potential threats or rewards in our environment.
It makes us look.
It is an arousal system. And the modern performative ecosystem, our feeds, our news cycles, our corporate ladder, it feeds us a continuous, never-ending stream of emotional spikes, outrage, and synthetic drama.
It keeps our brains in a perpetual state of high arousal and low satiety. We are just constantly scrolling, constantly seeking the next hit of novelty.
Whereas enduring authority, the kind of quiet gravity we see in Lincoln or that quiet engineer we talked about, operates on completely different neurological pathways.
It's not dopamine.
Enduring trust, genuine psychological safety, and deep social bonding do not trigger dopamine spikes.
They don't give you that rush.
No, they activate oxytocin, endogenous opioids, and the vagus nerve.
Okay, totally different chemistry.
And these biological systems do not respond to sudden, loud novelty. They respond to consistency.
They take time.
They require low arousal, sustained presence. And historically, they required physical proximity to actually develop.
So the tragic biological irony here is that we elevate the performers because our brains literally mistake the massive dopamine spike of novelty for the deep, settling reality of trust.
That's the glitch in our hardware.
We feel the rush of the spectacle, and our ancient wiring just says, oh, this person must be competent.
Yes.
And there's this incredible experiment mentioned in the sources that illustrates this biological hijacking so perfectly.
The herring gulls.
Yes. It was conducted in the 1940s by an ethologist named Nico Tinbergen. He was studying the instinctual behavior of herring gull chicks.
The discovery of the supernormal stimulus, it is honestly one of the most profound biological metaphors for our modern age.
It really is. So in nature, a newborn herring gull chick begs for food from its mother by instinctively pecking at this very specific little red spot on the mother's beak.
Right.
That red spot is the natural trigger for the feeding behavior. And Tinbergen wanted to see how far he could push this instinct.
How much he could manipulate it.
Yeah, he started making fake wooden beaks, with different-sized red spots to see if the chicks would peck at them, and what he found was just wild.
Even crazy.
He introduced a wooden stick that looked absolutely nothing like a bird. It was just a flat piece of wood, but he painted a massive, exaggerated red stripe across it.
A supernormal stimulus.
Exactly. And the chicks completely ignored their actual living mothers and began pecking frantically at the wooden stick.
They preferred the counterfeit to the real thing because the counterfeit was hyper-visible.
It was louder.
The exaggerated red stripe was perfectly optimized to trigger their biological instinct, just completely overriding their reality.
I was explaining this to a friend recently, and I compared it to high fructose corn syrup for our social instincts.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
You know, humans evolved to crave sweet fruit because it meant rare calories.
Survive.
But now we can synthesize that sweetness into a soda that has zero nutritional value, but our brains still scream, drink it.
Because the instinct is still there.
We are the herring gull chicks pecking at the painted wooden stick.
Yeah.
Our biology cannot tell the difference between the exaggerated, synthesized sign of confidence and actual load-bearing competence.
We are gorging ourselves on the synthetic spectacle of the stage, while our souls are literally starving for the authentic nourishment of the hearth.
Man. So if our biological wiring is the underlying vulnerability here, we have to look at the machine that is continuously delivering all this high fructose corn syrup to our brains.
The delivery mechanism.
Right, and this brings us to a massive underlying tension in the essay, the conflict between the modern algorithmic feed and objective truth.
And to fully appreciate how radical the algorithm is, we have to look at the history of how humans have managed information.
Okay.
Think about a map, or an encyclopedia, or even a traditional library index. For almost all of human history, information systems were designed with one humbling, overriding objective: to represent reality as it actually is, regardless of how you feel about it.
Like the map of the city doesn't care if you wish the river was closer to your house. The map is just the map.
Exactly. If you wanted to successfully navigate the world, you had to learn the language of the map. You had to orient yourself to reality.
Burden of adaptation was entirely on you.
But the modern algorithmic feed, the timeline on your phone has completely inverted this ancient relationship.
It flips it upside down.
The feed is a mirror, not a map. It tracks your every click, your dwell time, your subtle emotional triggers, and it constructs this customized, highly personalized reflection of your own desires, biases, and fears.
It's feeding you back to you.
It does not demand that you orient to reality.
Yeah.
It uses immense computing power to force a synthesized version of reality to orient to you.
And because it operates entirely on the physics of momentum clicks, shares, watch time, outrage, it completely ignores the concept of truth.
Truth doesn't factor into the code.
Right. The algorithm cannot tell the difference between a profound, life-altering philosophical insight and a manufactured piece of political outrage. It only measures the spin.
And Thornberry highlights this by contrasting the algorithm with the classical concept of the logos.
The logos.
Yeah, in ancient Greek philosophy and later in Christian theology, the logos is the rational, underlying, ordering principle of the universe.
It's the grammar of reality.
Exactly. The logos possesses immense objective gravity. It is unified, it is coherent, and it is self-sustaining.
And the algorithm is just the exact opposite of that?
He literally calls the algorithm the anti-logos. He compares it to a technological Tower of Babel.
Wow.
Instead of uniting humanity under a shared understanding of objective reality, the algorithm fractures reality into millions of personalized, contradictory, highly emotional feeds.
So everyone is living in their own separate universe.
Right. And it naturally elevates the performer, the person willing to spin the fastest, because nuance, objective truth, and careful hesitation, well, they do not generate engagement spikes.
They don't go viral.
The algorithm replaces the light, which traditionally reveals the world as it actually is, flaws and all with the screen, which simply reflects the user's ego back to itself, amplified.
I have to pause here, though, because, well, while I agree the algorithm is terrifying, I wonder if it's completely fair to lay all the blame on the technology.
That's a fair point.
When I was reading this critique of the algorithm, I just kept thinking about ancient history. Humans clearly loved a good, empty spectacle long before Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at the Roman Colosseum. I mean, people have been obsessed with gladiators, drama, and hollow entertainment for millennia. Isn't this just human nature?
That is a crucial pushback, and Thornberry actually addresses this historical reality in the text. You are entirely correct. The algorithm did not invent the performative ego.
We've always been like this.
It did not invent our innate desire for distraction or our vulnerability to spectacle. The flaw is deeply human. But what the algorithm does do is scale that ancient vulnerability to an unprecedented, inescapable degree.
It puts it on steroids.
It weaponizes our biological heuristics with machine learning, running millions of experiments a second to find the exact frequency that makes us peck at the painted stick.
So it's like the Romans had the Colosseum, but we have a Colosseum in our pocket that learns exactly what makes us specifically cheer.
Yes. Therefore, the solution isn't as simple as just deleting your social media apps and pretending you live in a 19th century agrarian utopia.
Because the problem is still inside you.
You can't just throw away the mirror, because the problem is the void inside the person looking into it. The algorithm merely reveals our internal emptiness.
So what's the actual fix?
The solution requires a fundamental, agonizing internal renovation. If we want to survive the spin, we have to learn how to forge load-bearing character in the dark.
Which is the hardest work of all. How do we actually do that? How do we build that internal masonry so we aren't just a curtain wall?
It's tough.
The author moves away from the diagnosis here and gets into the prescription, focusing on a concept he calls the liturgy of the ordinary.
Right. And he begins this by completely dismantling the modern self-help industry's approach to executive presence.
Oh, I love this part.
Think about the advice we usually get. Presence is treated as a technique you can literally learn in front of a bathroom mirror.
Yeah, you're told to sustain eye contact for exactly this many seconds.
Or use a resonant chest voice.
Strike a power pose before the meeting.
Use specific hand gestures. It's all stage direction. But Thornberry argues that true presence is not a posture of the body. It is the posture of a soul that is at rest in reality.
It's internal.
It is a structural coherence that must be formed long before anyone ever notices it.
So you cannot act your way into having gravity.
No, you can only act your way into having momentum. To explain how gravity is actually built, he uses this beautiful metaphor of a master swordsmith.
Okay, walk us through this.
Consider how a true battle-ready blade is forged. To create a sword that won't shatter the first time it strikes armor, the smith has to take raw, unrefined ore. They heat it in a blazing forge until it is malleable. Then they hammer it flat, fold it over on itself, and strike it again.
Over and over.
They repeat this brutal, exhausting process dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. That continuous folding creates thousands of microscopic, interconnected layers of steel, distributing the carbon evenly throughout the blade.
And here is the crucial insight. That folding process is never seen by the audience.
Never.
When a warrior draws the sword in battle, no one sees the microscopic internal architecture of the steel. But that unseen internal structure is the absolute only reason the blade survives the shock of combat.
That analogy resonates so deeply.
It really reminds me of watching elite athletes or classical musicians. You know, you watch a master pianist play a Chopin nocturne flawlessly in front of 1,000 people, and they make it look completely effortless.
They look totally free.
Right. But you can't hack your way into that kind of performance. You can't strike a power pose and suddenly know how to play the piano.
No amount of pizzazz will help you play Chopin.
That visible freedom to play beautifully is the direct result of thousands of hours of rigid, unseen, unglamorous structural practice in an empty room.
That maps perfectly onto the philosophical and neurological reality of how human character is actually built. Thornberry connects this unseen folding of the steel to a concept articulated by Thomas Aquinas called the habitus.
The habitus. Okay, I need you to unpack that because my modern brain just hears the word habit and immediately thinks about like biting my nails or checking my phone.
Right. In modern parlance, a habit is usually just a mindless routine. But in classical philosophy, a habitus is something much more profound. It is the deeply ingrained architecture of the soul.
Architecture of the soul.
It is a second nature that you have deliberately constructed. Let's look at the neuroscience behind this.
Please.
When you face a difficult moral choice for the first time, say, choosing to tell the truth when a lie would save your job, or choosing to remain patient when someone is screaming at your face, making that right choice requires immense, draining cognitive energy.
It takes so much effort.
Your prefrontal cortex has to manually override your emotional impulses. It feels like intense friction.
It's exhausting. It feels like you are going against your own survival instincts.
But as you repeat that choice, day after day, in small, ordinary moments, the liturgy of the ordinary moment, something physical happens in your brain.
Your brain actually changes.
Your neural pathways literally undergo a process called myelination. A fatty sheath wraps around the neural connections, making them thicker, faster, and more efficient.
Wow.
Over time, as the steel is folded again and again, the behavior shifts from the effortful prefrontal cortex down into the basal ganglia, the deeper part of the brain that handles automatic reflexes.
It becomes automatic.
The choice is no longer a draining struggle, it becomes your habitus. So when a leader with profound load-bearing presence walks into a chaotic room, they do not have to frantically calculate how to appear authentic.
They just are.
Their habitus of truth simply expresses itself effortlessly, just like the pianist playing the nocturne.
This totally redefines how we view freedom in the modern world. I mean, modernity tells us that freedom is the absence of structure.
Right. No rules.
It's keeping all your options open and refusing to commit so you can be completely spontaneous. But the classical view argues that if you haven't put in the hours to build a habitus of truthfulness, you actually aren't free at all.
You're a slave to your impulses.
When you are asked a tough question in a crisis, you are just a captive to your fear and your biological reflexes. True freedom isn't the lack of structure. True freedom is having built the correct internal structure so that you can effortlessly choose the good when it matters most.
And to begin building that structure, Thornberry recommends a practice he calls epistemological asceticism.
Epistemological asceticism. That is a heavy academic phrase. If I'm a listener driving to work right now, what does that actually look like on a random Tuesday afternoon?
Think of it as going on a rigorous diet for your brain's information intake. Asceticism is the practice of severe self-discipline and abstention. Applied to our epistemology, which is how we acquire knowledge, it means ruthlessly curating your inputs and actively embracing friction.
So turning off the phone.
Practically, it means refusing the frictionless, dopamine-fueled mirror of the algorithm. It means returning to load-bearing mediums.
Reading actual books.
Yes. Instead of scrolling a feed for an hour, you force your brain to read a dense, long-form book that requires sustained, uncomfortable attention.
Building that mental muscle.
And socially, it means doing deeply good, generous deeds for other people and ensuring that there is absolutely no paper trail. Generosity in the dark.
That is so countercultural. Doing it in the dark completely severs the tie between the good action and your ego's relentless demand for an audience.
It stars the ego.
You don't get to post about it. You don't get the like.
Exactly. You are folding the steel where no one can see it. And perhaps the most practical application of this asceticism is practicing what the author calls the pause.
The pause.
Between any stimulus in your environment and your reaction to it, there is a microscopic space. The performative self, driven by momentum and dopamine, reacts instantly to fill that space with noise.
Just immediately reacting.
The person of presence expands that space. They pause. In that silence, they consult their internal masonry and ask, what does reality actually require of me right now?
Wow.
That pause, that refusal to spin, is the physical manifestation of gravity.
But that brings up a profound existential question. Building this habitus, folding the steel, embracing friction, doing good deeds that no one will ever applaud you for. It sounds incredibly hard.
It is hard.
What actually motivates a human being to do this? What drives someone to seek gravity in the dark, especially when our entire society is busy throwing money and awards at the flashy, hollow facade?
Right, why bother?
The author argues that the driving force behind all character formation ultimately comes down to what we love.
And here we return to St. Augustine, who captured this reality with a breathtaking phrase in his Confessions. Pondus meum amor meus. My love is my weight.
My love is my weight. That is beautiful.
In the physical universe, we know that gravity is a function of mass. The larger the planet, the stronger the pull.
Right.
But Augustine argued that in the spiritual and psychological universe, gravity is a function of love. Love is a vector. It has direction and it has magnitude. It pulls you toward whatever you value most.
So what happens if you value the wrong things?
If your loves are disordered, if you love visibility more than you love virtue, or if you love your curated image more than you love the unvarnished truth, your soul is constantly being pulled in a dozen contradictory directions.
They get torn apart.
You become internally fragmented. And because you are fragmented, you become light. You lack mass.
And because you're a light, you have to spin to stay upright.
Precisely. But when your loves are rightly ordered, when you love the highest good objective truth above your own ego, all those conflicting vectors align.
They pull in the same direction.
Your soul achieves structural coherence. You become heavy with reality. You achieve gravity. You no longer need to project a persona because you are deeply, securely anchored.
And the essay doesn't just leave this as a personal internal philosophy. The author takes this concept of ordered versus disordered loves and applies it to the macro level, looking at the ecology of entire institutions.
He scales it up.
Yeah, he contrasts two different types of leaders to show how this plays out in reality. On one hand, you have a classic Silicon Valley startup founder.
The archetype.
He's a total master of the stage. He pitches this sweeping messianic vision of elevating global consciousness through his app.
He's got the black turtleneck, the perfect slides.
Exactly. He secures millions in funding. He's on the cover of magazines. He has massive momentum. But behind the curtain wall, his loves are disordered.
The internal culture is toxic.
The financials are smoke and mirrors, and eventually the entire thing collapses into a scandal and a zero valuation.
And to contrast that spinning top, Thornberry gives the example of a quiet Midwest pastor.
A completely different world.
This man has spent 35 years in the exact same small parish. He hasn't written any best-selling books. His church's website looks like it was built in 1998.
It's terrible.
He doesn't cast theatrical, world-changing visions on a stage, but he has spent decades folding the steel in the dark. He loves his people more than he loves an audience.
His loves are ordered.
So when members of his community face crushing, agonizing crises, a death in the family, a terminal diagnosis, they do not go to the visionary.
No.
They come to the pastor, and they find deeply load-bearing counsel. Over decades, he has built an enduring generational orbit of peace.
One man built a stage, the other man built a hearth.
That distinction between the stage and the hearth is the defining metric for institutional health. Institutions decay precisely when they adopt the metrics of the stage over the quiet demands of the hearth.
So true.
Think about a corporate boardroom that hires a flashy, visionary CEO who projects absolute certainty while passing over the steady, competent steward who actually understands the business.
Happens all the time.
Or a church that measures its health by weekend attendance numbers and production value, rather than the actual lived virtue of its members in the community. They are measuring momentum instead of measuring gravity.
Which brings up a really crucial, almost terrifying test for any organization. What happens to a company or a movement or a family when the performative leader is suddenly removed from the equation?
The entire structure collapses overnight.
Just completely falls apart.
Because the institution wasn't built on truth. It was built entirely on the leader's personal momentum. The leader made themselves the center of the orbit, and their ego was the only gravity holding the planets in place.
Wow.
When they retire or fall from grace, the planets just fly off into the dark. There was no internal masonry.
But a true ontological leader, a leader with actual weight, does not make themselves the center of the universe.
Never.
They constantly point the organization toward the objective truth. They distribute the gravity throughout the culture so that the building stands strong long after they have left the room.
And speaking of families and the hearth, the author argues that the family home is the ultimate microcosm of civilization.
It's where it all starts.
It is the original hearth. But he warns that the modern screen is fundamentally destroying it.
Historically, the hearth was the literal and metaphorical center of the home.
Yeah.
Right? It was a place of fire, shared food, and inescapable physical proximity.
You couldn't avoid each other.
The hearth demanded your physical and emotional presence. You had to actually look at your family. Now, the glowing center of the modern home is the screen.
And the screen does not demand presence?
It demands projection. We now have families sitting on the exact same living room couch, physically adjacent to one another, but ontologically light years apart, because each person is entirely consumed by their own isolated, personalized algorithmic feed.
And the author specifically calls out this modern phenomenon of sharenting, parents who constantly broadcast their children's lives online.
Hosting every single moment.
He describes it as the looking glass self put on steroids.
The psychological damage of this must be profound. The looking glass self is a sociological concept that suggests we develop our sense of identity based on how we believe others perceive us.
Right.
If a child's intimate, vulnerable moments, their tantrums, their milestones, or their quiet play, are constantly captured by a lens and broadcast to an invisible audience, they learn a devastating lesson before they can even articulate a sentence.
My inherent value is directly tied to my visibility.
It breaks my heart. Screens format children into performers who are optimizing for dopamine hits and audience approval.
They learn to perform before they learn to be.
The physical hearth, on the other hand, with all its boring, awkward silences and unrecorded chores, forms children into participants in reality. It teaches them that they have mass and value even when no one is watching.
This intimate tragedy in the living room scales all the way up to the civilizational level. The text goes back to ancient Rome to contrast a culture of gravitas with a culture that collapsed into spectacle.
In the early centuries of the Roman Republic, the highest civic ideal a citizen could aspire to was gravitas.
Gravitas.
It meant having a soul with immense mass, anchored to duty, truth, and the good of the Republic. And the legend of Cincinnatus perfectly captures this ethos.
Tell a story, it's so good.
So Rome is facing an existential military threat. The Senate goes to Cincinnatus, who is quite literally out plowing his field, and gives him absolute dictatorial power to save the state.
Ultimate power.
He accepts the burden, he leaves his plow, organizes the army, completely defeats the enemy, and then, having achieved ultimate momentum and power, he immediately resigns his dictatorship and just goes back to his farm.
He chose the gravity of reality over the momentum of power.
That is the ultimate load-bearing character. But then you flash forward a few centuries to the Roman Empire.
You move from Cincinnatus to Nero.
Quite the downgrade.
Nero did not just rule the Roman Empire, he performed it. He was obsessed with the stage. He would force the Roman Senate to sit for hours and watch his agonizingly long musical performances.
He would punish anyone who fell asleep, right?
Punishing anyone who fell asleep or tried to leave. And the empire eventually fell, not simply because of barbarian invasions, but because the center couldn't hold.
The masonry was gone.
The citizens traded the exhausting, load-bearing virtue of the Republic for the hollow, thrilling entertainment of the Colosseum. They traded the hearth for the stage.
The French philosopher Blaise Pascal nailed this dynamic in the 1600s with his concept of divertissement, or diversion.
Oh, Pascal was so ahead of his time.
He famously wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
We spin to avoid facing the void within ourselves. When our institutions and our culture abandon objective truth, we lose our center of gravity.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
And because the human soul cannot survive suspended in a void, we settle for the synthetic spectacle. We orbit the void. We scroll the feed. We watch the Colosseum.
So, if that is the civilizational drift we are caught in, if we are a culture of curtain walls just completely addicted to momentum, how do we actually fix it? Because it seems clear we can't just launch a better marketing campaign to solve this.
No, you can't.
We can't use pizzazz to cure a disease caused by pizzazz.
No, we cannot. The solution to a structural collapse isn't political activism, it isn't a viral social media movement, and it definitely isn't a new app.
You cannot legislate gravity.
Civilizational recovery only happens from the ground up, when millions of individuals make the agonizing choice to stop performing and start being.
It's the daily choices.
It happens when the teacher demands rigorous, deep reading from their students instead of just trying to entertain them. It happens when the executive refuses to inflate the quarterly projections and instead tells the board the hard truth.
When the parent turns off the glowing screen.
Right, sits at the dinner table and embraces the awkward silence of the hearth. We have to stop trying to be mirrors for the culture and instead become tuning forks for reality.
Let's synthesize this incredible journey we've been on today. We started by looking at the hollow curtain walls of modern personas, the exhausting, frantic spin of centrifugal momentum that we all feel pressure to maintain in our careers and online.
The spinning top.
We explored how our ancient evolutionary heuristics have been hijacked by the dopamine engines of the modern algorithm, causing us to continuously confuse loud confidence with actual load-bearing competence.
The herring goals.
And we saw that the only genuine way out of this trap is the quiet, unobserved folding of the steel in the dark. It is the liturgy of the ordinary that creates true gravitational presence.
It is a massive, life-altering paradigm shift. And before we close, there's a fascinating meta-perspective from the author himself that I just have to share.
Oh, please do.
In the introduction to the text, Jamie Thornberry wrote a note about the actual creation and publication of this essay. He explicitly states that if his thesis is true, that receptivity to truth is a mysterious gift, and that we must completely abandon the hollow mechanics of the stage, then he cannot, in good conscience, use dopamine manipulation or stage mechanics to market his own ideas.
He refuses to use the algorithm to fight the algorithm. That is incredible.
He designed the text simply to act as a tuning fork. He says it emits an objective frequency relying entirely on the gravity of the logos, the truth of reality.
He's just putting it out there.
He trusts that readers who possess the hearing ear, those who are exhausted by the spin, will simply resonate with it. He isn't trying to manufacture a viral movement or build a personal brand.
Well, it says
He is just trying to fortify a remnant of people who are willing to bear the weight of reality.
he is actually living the thesis of his own work. That is incredibly challenging, and it brings me to a final provocative thought for you to take away today.
I love these final thoughts.
As we close this deep dive, I want you to think back to that opening image of the Hollywood backlot versus the heavy, load-bearing stone of a cathedral. The author argues convincingly that true weight, true character, can only be built in the dark, away from the applause of the crowd.
In the dark.
So here is your challenge for today. What is one load-bearing, deeply good thing you can do today that absolutely no one else will ever see, record, or know about?
That's a high bar.
Because that one invisible act, that quiet choice to fold the steel in the dark, might be the most structurally important thing you do all week.
It is the first fold of the steel.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep seeking the gravity of the real, and we'll catch you next time.